This is our Changing State Vote 2024. I'm Matthew Petty. The presidential election has been oh so close and a big source of stress for a lot of Americans. A Pew Research Center study found just over half of Americans feel angry when they think about politics, and nearly two-thirds always or often feel exhausted thinking about politics. So in a high-stakes election like this one, where the outcome may not even be decided right away, how do you keep calm amid the turmoil and uncertainty? Tampa therapist Dr. Anissa Hansen has some pointers for navigating that stress. Anissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
The presidential campaign has been a slog. People may be feeling completely overwhelmed at this point, and there's a lot of emotion riding on Election Day itself. What are some ways people can navigate the stress of Election Day?
That's a good question. I'm also one of the ones that are feeling overwhelmed. I haven't really met anybody that isn't affected by it right now. I work with a wide range of ages, from like 20-year-olds to 6-year-olds, and everyone's kind of having the same stress and anxiety around what's going on.
So wait a minute. 6-year-olds, you're
60.
Oh, 60.
Yeah. Like 20 to 60-year-olds. So it's like everyone's on the same, the uncertainty, the overwhelm. And it's like, I think there's a lot of burnout too, of feeling it for so long.
Yeah.
So you're saying on Election Day, what are some things to do? I think it really has to come down with taking some self-ownership of yourself, really owning how you showed up, if you voted, if you reached out to officials, and all the things you need to do. On Election Day, you really did all the stuff that's possible, and making sure, are you calming yourself? Are you connecting to yourself? Are you live streaming something that maybe is very reactive to you, which I'm not going to be doing because I work really hard to calm my own nervous system. So I recommend, if that's too much for you, don't do it. Go to a dinner, go to a movie. No magical things are going to happen because you're watching it. It's more like, okay, I did my thing, step away from it. But I remember from the last election, the election before, it was very similar. There was a lot of panic, and people were crying, and the numbers were going. And it was like, I don't know if you remember that, but I see that happening with this too. And really making sure people are taking care of their nervous systems, because they only have one.
So some of the things you mentioned there, like going to dinner with friends, going to a movie, sort of taking yourself out of the moment.
Out of it, yes.
What else can you do to ground yourself? Are there some things you can do, like kind of activities you might sort of do, like a mantra or something?
Yeah, some breath work, because when you talk about the fear brain or the anxious brain, it's when the limbic system gets hijacked. So when the sympathetic strand of the autonomic nervous system gets overloaded and stays there for too long, that's where the anxiety and the panic starts to take over. And I think we normalize low-grade panic in general in our society, and so it doesn't take much to and the divisive thinking and the black and white thinking actually amplifies the panic and the fear. So you really have to be mindful of, what am I doing to intercept the fear response and the anxious thoughts? So breath work is really helpful because it helps coming back to the present moment, connecting to nature, going on a walk, talking to a good friend. Also setting boundaries of, when am I watching the news? When am I opening my phone? When am I getting on the internet? When am I on social media? Because with algorithms and headlines, you can't really control what you're opening yourself up to. Mm-hmm. So when you do that, it's really being mindful of, am I in a space where I can do that and be okay with it? And if I'm not, I have to own that. Yeah. Because no one's really in control of making sure you're okay but you. No politician, no policy. That's your job to say, hey, if I'm already reactive, why am I opening myself up more to this stuff?
Now, this election has been painted by both presidential candidates as an existential moment. If your candidate doesn't win, how do you keep things in perspective?
Which is really good. I worked with some of my clients on this, of doing some visualizations, because, there's a chance your candidate may win, and there may be a chance they're not going to win. So really, before Election Day, of sitting with your body, what would it feel like if they won? Okay, having that experience. And then what would it feel like if they didn't win? Really feeling it, letting yourself feel it. You're going to be okay. You're resilient. We've been here before. Life goes on. The flow of life continues. And also connecting to what's in your control, right? How do you show up every day? How do you take care of the people in your life? How are you present with your kids? How do you treat the person in line behind you? I think when the fear takes over, we feel like we have no control. That's why we kind of go into the panic, because we're like, I have to know what's going to happen, or I can't handle it. But we have control every day. And I think it helps people remember that, of, you have more control, more power than you realize.
What are some things that may trigger election anxiety? You mentioned a couple of things like getting stuck in social media, maybe live streaming something that you probably don't have to, but are there some things that people may not even be aware of that are adding to their stress around this election season?
Yes, this happens a lot. And I think there's a lot of programmed responses of like, I wake up and check my phone. I wake up, I put the news on. So I think really before you turn something on, try to ask yourself, am I trying to get knowledge and wisdom here? Am I really trying to be informed? Or am I just doing what I've always done? Because we almost get addicted to like the fear and the anxiety, but not knowing how we're destroying our nervous system. And once the election is done, your nervous system doesn't go back automatically. So we're kind of destroying it all day long, and we're all this panic, and then we like, oh, the election's over. No. You really have to make sure you're walking through it and making sure you're having these moments every day of, in the hour in the morning when you wake up is so important. Like, do you have to know everything bad that's going on in the world? Like, 5 minutes after you open your eyes, probably not, and then before you go to bed, the same thing. People aren't sleeping at night because they're on their phone. Take that time to downregulate, take a bath, have a tea. It's going to be okay. The problems are going to be there in the morning. It's like a good reminder. It's like the urgency culture is really hijacking people.
Yeah, I actually deleted a couple of apps off my phone recently. Yes. I mean, I can still look at them on the computer, but I realized I don't need to be looking at this stuff.
But a lot of it's automated, too, of like I see the app and I click it, and I do it, too. So I delete everything. I go through cleanses, or I put it on the last page, and I help people do this, too, because they don't even know they're on it. They've been on it for 20 minutes. Don't even remember opening it. Yeah.
Part of people's stress, though, and especially around the election day itself, is because they want answers, right? So how do you strike a balance between getting the information you want or need, like the results of an election, and managing your exposure to things that may be stress-inducing, like political news or social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we forget, like, throughout history, this has been a thing, And so what I go to as I go back to, like, the Roman times or whatever, I mean, there was talk about political uncertainty. So I like to go back and be like, okay, we're not alone in this. This isn't the first time. We think when we're in these moments, it's everything. So remembering, okay, it's going to be okay. What am I doing today? Right? How am I showing up for work? How am I treating, you're going to have issues with your boss. It's going to be constant. Uncertainty is around us. So it's like teaching ourselves how to be with the uncertainty, even if it's something you don't like. And there might be a chance it's something you don't like. But it's about resiliency within yourself. How are you going to own yourself? Are you going to let this thing hijack who you are in the world, right? Or like, how do you keep moving through no matter what happens, whatever the outcome is? That's true perseverance, I think.
Mm-hmm. Thinking about the long-term impact of this, now chronic stress can take a toll on people's emotional and physical health, and researchers at the University of South Florida surveyed registered voters across the United States about a range of issues. Nearly 2/3 of respondents said the politics was a source of stress for them. Some of the impacts include lost sleep, conflict with friends and family. What are some warning signs you want to be looking out for?
Yes, chronic stress has always been an issue, especially, the hustle culture and all these things. So this is just another, like, adding some gasoline to the fire is like the last thing we need. But it's a real thing. So I think it's going back to owning yourself. Like if you are doom scrolling all day and you're expecting to have a calm nervous system or enjoy life, it's just not going to happen. It's something I have to do every single day. I have to commit to a practice with myself of, am I in nature? Am I walking? Long-term exposure to stress creates, higher levels of depression, hormone issues, panic attacks. I mean, people think sometimes these things come out of nowhere, but it's more like all day, every day, not realizing how it's been just destroyed. Your body's destroyed, neurotransmitters are destroyed, your hormones are destroyed, your organs, your heart, your nervous system. It's all impacted by it. And taking care of it. No one's going to take care of your nervous system more than you are. And so you have to nurture it,
Yeah.
It needs help, which we don't do. We wait till it's broken. And then we're like, now there's a problem.
Thinking of how you treat people in your daily interactions with them, like whether it's somebody in the grocery checkout line or somebody in the car next to you, is part of the problem we're seeing around stress, and particularly in election season, that people just aren't communicating effectively with each other face to face.
Yes, it's very true. And it's also a part of that. We're talking about the limbic system. And so I call it the lizard brain. So when the lizard brain gets so hijacked that the prefrontal cortex turns off, which is like the rational connecting part of our brain. So we're all kind of like in a freeze lizard brain state, like zombies walking around, and we're not like communicating with people. And so we're getting stuck in that black or white thinking, which the fear brain feeds off of, which can be really dangerous, which, we've seen historically in wars and other things of me against the other, or like the bad people or the good people versus the bad people, which is we're just people. And people have those views and those beliefs based on their personal experiences and their exposure, just like you do. And the more you humanize it, which is where wisdom comes from, is understanding. The more black and white you think something is, the more unconscious you probably are, and the more lizard brain-ish you're coming from, which is a good mind, like to call yourself out, of like, the most wise people don't think in black or white.
Right. But you've got to take a moment. You've got to sort of take that step back and try and look at things critically, which is tough when you're in that moment. Make
eye contact with somebody, hold the door for them, pay for the groceries if you have the money to do that. Like, going back to the human side of it actually downregulates the nervous system of like, oh, we're okay. We're in this together, But we're all on our phones in the checkout and we're like, it's not helping us,
So how much is social media to blame? And I'm wondering how much goes back to 2020 when people had to kind of retreat from public spaces and take refuge online because of lockdowns triggered by the pandemic.
Yes, so true. Well, social media and the internet didn't come with instructions. And now we're seeing that with kids too, where parents are like, oh, I didn't know, there was kind of a guinea pig generation there, like the Gen Z. So now we're like, as adults, we need rules. We have no rules. I have to have rules. So really putting some strict, they have like the app, they have the limits of how much time you can be on it or deleting them, and saying it's not meant to have a calm brain. They're designed, they're businesses. They're designed for you to stay on them and be like amped up, and your nervous system to be like, I want more, and realizing, how do I feel when I'm on these things? Do I feel better? Do I feel better about the world? It's very scary and very anxiety provoking. Mm-hmm. And I get caught up in that too. So I have to be really mindful. My job is to help calm people, and I get caught up. I'm just as guilty as doing the same thing. So get it off your phone. It's not meant for a calm, well-being life. They want to sell products to you, so you stay on and scare you to do that,
Aside from putting some kind of limiter, an app that kind of kicks you off after a certain time, or just getting rid of the app completely, because that may not be an option for some folks,
well,
right?
It's scary because you might need that. The FOMO is very real.
Sure. So what are some other strategies you can use to disengage when you need to from social media?
Well, I would say the 1 hour in the morning and the 1 hour at night minimum.
But not right when you get up.
Yeah. So like that first hour you wake up, no phone zone. Absolutely. Like, you have to take some ownership of your life. Like, you're in different brain waves when you wake up, and the first thing you give it is high stress. So the body can't even regulate before the day starts. And we're not being taught that, of like the ongoing anxiety and the panic that happens from that, and the depression that happens from that, and the ADHD and a lot of other things, that come off from that as well, which, I don't think is being talked about because companies want you on there, sure. Which makes sense. And then the sleep thing too, of like, it takes about 2 hours for your body to downregulate before it gets ready for sleep. Mm-hmm. So what are you seeing at night? What are you watching? Are you amping yourself up and then laying down and wondering why you can't sleep? Like, right, it has to turn off. The nervous system, the brain, the body, the organs are all downregulating, and taking care of that. Like, it's like a little baby. Like, just because you're an adult doesn't mean your body's still an infant sometimes.
Speaking of babies, do you remember that little toy that came out a couple of decades ago called a Tamagotchi?
Yes. Oh, they're back now.
They're back?
Yeah, they made it resurgence.
Isn't that the same sort of philosophy, though? Just a thing that you have to keep paying attention to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think we have the innate drive to take care and be nurturing. And so that's why I help people, too, when the stress happens. We become opposite of that. We're just like shells of ourselves. And so tuning into like helping a neighbor, helping a friend, like it helps shifts. Like, I think we naturally are nurturing and caring and compassionate. And when these things happen, I think we forget that because the fear brain doesn't care about that stuff. It cares about survival and being right and righteousness and judgment. And so we get away from the evolution of, we became these really caring, sensitive people. You know, at the end of the day, I think that's who we all are, you know.
Can you talk a little bit about boundary setting? Like, what are some things to think about setting boundaries for yourself, like limiting your exposures to social media, and boundaries for what other people can expect from you? For example, telling people that some political conversations may be off limits.
Yes, for sure. So a lot of boundaries. So you want to be informed, and you also want to set boundaries. And people think that's like contradictory, you know, because if I'm not looking at this stuff, how am I going to know? So once again, trying to be mindful of like, okay, Mondays from 8 to 9, I'm going to open that up, or I'm going to read an article, or maybe for like a long form content and not just like some clickbait, you know. So like if there's a certain topic I actually want to learn about, get curious about that and learn about that, and be strategic and treat it like a course or a class, and not just like whatever comes in your phone, just like, you know, willy-nilly looking at that. I think the other thing is with friends and other people. You know, there's some friends that may be more open to sending you articles or posts and like trying to change your mind, or, you know, or family members, you know, we all have those. I have them too. And just saying, hey, thank you for sharing, but that's not something I really want to talk about right now. Or if you go out with a friend, like being proactive, like if it's okay if we don't talk about politics tonight, you know, and you maybe feel the urge to do that, and you really have to like limit your own self, because you might get triggered or activated. And going back to like, it's your job to calm yourself and own that. I think the other thing is being active, like setting boundaries, moving the energy. Like, am I moving? Am I working out? Am I riding a bike? Am I in nature? Because there's so much chaotic energy and stressful energy that the body can't handle. It starts to implode, which creates a lot of burnout and fatigue.
Right. So if you're exercising or doing something physical, you kind of give your brain a little bit of recharge time.
Yeah. Well, if you think like a puppy, right? You have like all this energy, and then we like try to like make it stay inside, and it's like, I can't, you know. That's the same thing your body's doing. It's like, let it move and off gas, and you always will feel better. You always feel a little more hopeful and a little more joy, which I think, you know, is really important. And obviously we care. We want to be informed, but being intentional where you're getting your information from. And also I think part of setting these limits and doing it better is connecting with people and being in the community. So finding good friends that you can be honest with, that, you know, you can hold space with each other and not judge each other. I think we need more real human interaction, I think is really important too.
So you got to get out of your bubble a little bit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And doing what you can, taking action, you know, doing what you can do, voting, contacting your, you know, local officials, or what, you know, donating money, your time, resources, if you can do that, and helps get out of that just freeze state, the panic state.
What about managing expectations then? If people are expecting their anxiety level to go down quickly after Election Day, but it doesn't, how do they kind of keep a lid on long-term anxiety around politics?
Yeah, well, I don't think politics are going anywhere. Like I said, I love to read the Marcus Aurelius Meditations, because it's just like the same stuff. It's like pandemics, you know, political stuff, you know, uncertainty, financial, you know, it's like sometimes we forget. And so it's like, nothing new is here. It will come back around. I've been through this before. And I think it's going to build people's resiliency of like, I can't just let all this stuff take over. Like, I still have to show up in the world, and beautiful things are happening every day. And how I show up and impact people and treat people matters. Like, I matter. I don't have to be the president to make an impact. In your little microcosm, you can make a serious impact on the people you care about, you know, every single day. And I think sometimes that's getting thrown away because we think, I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to ruin my life. But you can still show up and make a huge impact all the time, which I think helps calm some of that anxiety. Like long term, like how do I want to be in the world? You know, how do people want to be remembered as? Like that's important, which I think we forget because we're just waiting for other people to do it for us, which would be nice. I would like that too. But what if that doesn't happen? You know, we're kind of giving up our power for the powers that be to make it better for us. And I just don't want to wait around for that, you know, which I try to teach and empower people that too.
Well, we've been speaking with Tampa therapist Dr. Anissa Hansen about navigating political stress and anxiety. Anissa, thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Our Changing State is a production of WUSF. Our executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Scott Wachtler produces the podcast. Videos by Warren Buckholtz and Chandler Bolcom, who also does our graphics. Engineering support from Blake Bass. Jackson Harp composed our theme music. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for listening.